You know that feeling, right? When you absolutely should go to the gym, but the couch is just calling your name.
Oh, definitely. Winning the battle.
Or you're trying to learn something new, maybe a skill, and suddenly everything else seems way more interesting.
Yeah, every little distraction. We've all been there, fighting those battles where self-discipline feels like the absolute hardest thing to manage.
It really does.
And that ability, to navigate those internal fights, to actually stay committed to what we want long term, when, well, immediate gratification is right there. It's such a crucial skill.
Massively impacts our lives.
Totally. And like any skill, kind of understanding how it works, under the hood, that can give you a real edge.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, the whole fascinating world of self-discipline.
Yeah, digging in.
We'll look at the science, like why is it sometimes so incredibly hard? What are those sneaky things that trip us up? And maybe most importantly, what are the practical, evidence-based strategies you can actually use to build up that self-control?
Right, and we'll even touch on this, this relatable story from one of the sources. The author's own journey, using discipline to change their physique.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. Self-discipline isn't just about saying no to the bad stuff.
Right.
It's also about consistently saying yes to the things that will ultimately help us.
Exactly. So our mission today, let's cut through all the noise, pull out the really useful, actionable stuff from our sources.
Get to the good bits.
Yeah, give you a clearer roadmap, basically, for building stronger self-discipline without feeling like you're drowning in information. Think of it as getting the essential toolkit.
Yeah, the practical toolkit for taking control. And a really key first step in building that kit, it's understanding the biological side of things.
Foundations.
Exactly. It's kind of like you wouldn't try to fix a car without knowing how the engine works, right? Or treat an illness without knowing the cause.
Makes sense. Our sources point to some really interesting brain research here. There is this 2009 study, Todd Hare and Colin Kammerer, using fMRIs.
Oh yeah, that one's fascinating. It gives you a peek inside the brain during these, well, discipline choices.
So what did they find?
Well, what's really interesting is they saw more activity in a specific spot, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, when people chose a bigger reward later on instead of a smaller one right now.
Huh. So it really highlights that sort of internal negotiation we do now versus later.
Precisely. And then there's another bit, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That part got more active when people were really weighing up future versus immediate stuff.
Okay.
And get this, more activity there. It correlated with actually choosing the long-term win, the bigger reward down the line, or maybe the healthier food choice.
So it suggests that how easy self-discipline feels isn't like the same for everyone. It depends on these brain bits.
Exactly. It's influenced by the activity, maybe even the structure of these prefrontal areas. But here's the key insight, right? You can actually practice focused tasks, kind of like exercising those brain regions. And that gradually makes disciplined choices feel easier. It's not just about being born with willpower. It's about, developing those neural pathways.
That's actually really encouraging. The sources also mention how early experiences can play a role. Like if you always got what you wanted instantly as a kid.
Yeah, apparently that can mean those brain structures for delaying gratification, they might not get as much, workout.
So they're underdeveloped?
Potentially. Constant instant rewards might lead to, let's say, underutilized pathways for impulse control. And that can make it tougher to resist urges later in adulthood.
Right.
But, and this is really important, our brain's incredibly adaptable. Neuroplasticity, right?
Okay.
Means we can strengthen these areas at any age. It just takes consistent effort.
Got it. Now, a term that kept coming up was executive functions. Sounds pretty high level.
It does sound official, doesn't it? Yeah. But they're basically the core brain skills that let us focus and, manage our behavior effectively.
Like the boss of the brain.
Kind of. Think of them like the brain's air traffic control system.
What?
They coordinate everything to help us reach our goals. And focus, as we know, is just fundamental for self-discipline.
Okay, so what are these executive functions specifically?
Well, there are three core ones that are super relevant here. First, working memory, that's like your mental juggling ability, holding info in your mind. Then, impulse control, pretty obvious, resisting those urges.
Right.
And third, cognitive flexibility. That's about being adaptable, switching gears mentally.
And why the executive label? What makes them so important?
Because they let us do all the important stuff. Set goals, stick to them, prioritize, filter out distractions, stop ourselves from doing unhelpful things.
Basically taking charge.
Exactly. Taking charge of your thoughts and actions to get where you want to go.
And which brain parts are running these operations?
It's a network, really. Includes that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex we mentioned, the decision hub, also the anterior cingulate cortex, which spots errors,
Okay.
the orbitofrontal cortex for evaluating risks and rewards, and even some motor areas that help us plan and, actually do things.
So if these functions are so central, can we actually train them, improve them?
Absolutely. That's the good news. The sources really highlight this. Practices like meditation, for instance.
Right, I've heard about that.
It's not just about chilling out. Studies using fMRI, those fancy brain scanners that show active areas.
Yeah.
They've shown that after just like an 8-week mindfulness course,
Yeah.
people actually had increased blood flow to these exact executive function regions.
Wow, a real measurable effect.
Totally. So when we talk about strengthening that prefrontal cortex with things like meditation, you're essentially boosting your own command center, making it easier to handle impulses and stay focused.
That's really cool. It's not just about trying harder. There's biology we can actually influence. Now, another big concept is willpower itself. And it's often described as limited, like a resource that runs out. That sounds a bit bleak.
It can sound that way, yeah. But understanding its limits is actually key to managing it well. The common analogy is like a gas tank or a muscle.
It gets tired.
It gets depleted with use. Research has literally shown less cognitive activity, lower blood glucose levels, brain fuel, basically in people after they've exerted a lot of willpower.
So even the most disciplined person can just hit a wall.
Precisely. No matter how strong you think your willpower is, if you're just constantly facing temptation for ages, you're probably going to give in eventually.
Okay, so that's a key insight then. Don't just rely on gritting your teeth for long periods.
Right. Strategize. Minimize the temptations when you can. Tackle the hard stuff when your tank feels fuller. It's like trying to run a marathon without any water or fuel. Doesn't matter how determined you are, eventually you'll just run out of steam.
And this isn't just theory, right? There was that classic study.
Oh yeah, the Baumeister one from '96 with the cookies and radishes.
Yes. Tell us about that.
Okay, so picture this. People are in a room, smells amazing like fresh cookies. There are cookies, and there are also radishes.
Okay, cruel.
Right, so one group gets to eat the cookies. Lucky them. The other group, they have to resist the cookies and only eat the radishes. A major willpower workout.
I bet they weren't happy.
Not thrilled, no.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. Afterwards, both groups get this puzzle to solve supposedly unrelated.
Yeah.
The radish eaters, the ones who had to resist the cookies, they gave up on the puzzle way sooner, made fewer attempts.
Wow.
It was like that first act of self-control just drained their tanks for the next challenge.
That really shows how one thing impacts the next. So practically, what does this mean for us day to day?
It means we need to be way more aware of when our willpower might be low. Had a stressful day, used up a lot of self-control already, you'd be much more vulnerable later, like reaching for junk food after that draining meeting.
It's like our brain flips into survival mode when energy's low.
Totally. Low blood sugar, low energy. Brain goes, need quick fuel, now. Which means instant gratification looks really appealing.
That sugar rush, the easy dopamine hit from scrolling.
Exactly. And dopamine, remember, that's the brain chemical tied to pleasure and motivation. Easy hits can easily derail discipline.
And stress, I imagine, just makes all this worse.
Oh, absolutely. Stress basically diverts energy away from the prefrontal cortex, the long-term thinking, self-control part.
Right.
Your focus narrows to just getting through the moment, which makes you prone to impulsive stuff, maybe regrettable decisions that just offer quick comfort.
So the takeaway isn't just be stronger, it's be smarter about managing and conserving that willpower.
Yes, precisely. Our sources really hammer this home. Conserve willpower by proactively avoiding those really tempting situations in the first place.
Like if you're trying to cut back on online shopping.
Unsubscribe from the emails. Don't browse the sites. It's way more effective than just relying on willpower when that amazing deal pops up.
That makes total sense. Design your environment to help you. Don't just fight it constantly, like the sugar example if it's in the house.
It's a constant battle, draining your willpower bit by bit.
Okay, so understanding willpower's limits is step one. But what about the flip side? Motivation.
Ah, yes. Crucial. The sources stress that it's not just about forcing yourself. It's also about tapping into what genuinely drives you.
Right. And there are different flavors of motivation, aren't there? The idea of intrinsic motivator.
Exactly, those internal drivers, things that come from within us. The big three highlighted are autonomy.
Our desire to be in control, make our own choices.
Yep. Then mastery, that urge to just get better at stuff, improve our skills.
Okay.
And purpose, that feeling that what we're doing matters, makes an impact.
They used Kobe Bryant as an example for mastery, right? His insane work ethic wasn't just about discipline.
It was driven by that deep desire to be the absolute best.
Yeah.
Pure mastery motivation.
And the contrast was like discipline without purpose feeling pointless.
Yeah, like pointless suffering. Imagine slogging through med school without actually feeling that purpose, that calling to help people. It would be incredibly hard to maintain the discipline.
So a key takeaway here, consciously link your goals to autonomy, mastery, or purpose. That gives you a stronger, more sustainable drive.
Absolutely. Way more resilient than just external rewards. Which brings us to that distinction, extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation.
Extrinsic is the outside stuff, rewards, praise, avoiding punishment. Intrinsic is internal, personal values, enjoyment.
Spot on. And knowing which one is mainly driving you is really important for figuring out how to reward yourself or how to course correct when you slip up.
Because a bonus might motivate one person, but someone else might just care about doing good work intrinsically.
Exactly, it's personal. Interestingly, the sources even bring up Aristotle's causes for human action.
Oh.
Yeah, boiling it down to, we're either driven emotionally seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, or rationally. A very basic look at what makes us tick.
It underlines that constant push and pull between impulse and reason in self-discipline.
Right. And speaking of pushing limits, the 40% rule really jumped out at me.
Yeah, the idea that when you feel totally spent, you've probably only used like 40% of what you're actually capable of.
Exactly. It's such a powerful mental shift. It basically says our perception of limits is often way off.
And belief is key.
Totally. Believing you can push through that initial wall of discomfort or self-doubt, that's often the deciding factor, like the push-up example they use.
Right, thinking just one more.
And then another. Believing you can often makes it true, builds that mental toughness. The source basically says, discipline is often about how much discomfort you can stomach, and most people bend way before they actually break.
Building that tolerance. Okay, so we know motivation is important, but even with the best intentions, things go wrong. What are the common traps?
Yeah, knowing the pitfalls is half the battle. One big one is false hope syndrome.
Sounds ominous, setting ourselves up to fail.
Pretty much. It's when we set these wildly unrealistic expectations, like, I'm going to completely overhaul my diet and exercise routine overnight.
Yeah, done that. Doesn't usually stick.
Exactly. You hit a snag, feel discouraged, and maybe even slide back further. The key, the sources say, is smaller, achievable goals. Build momentum with wins.
Makes sense. Then there's procrastination, the old classic, often linked to perfectionism, right?
Definitely. That fear of not doing it perfectly stops us from even starting. There's a useful idea called the 75% rule.
Okay.
Basically, aim to act when you feel about 75% sure or ready. Because waiting for 100%, you might wait forever.
So true. And it's so easy to rationalize delaying things. Oh, I'll start Monday. I need more time to prepare.
Right. The sources are clear. There's never a perfect time. Waiting for ideal conditions. That's often just self-sabotage in disguise. Just starting, even imperfectly, is usually the best way.
And Parkinson's law, that's another one. Work expands to fill the time available.
Such a sneaky one. Give yourself a week for a 2-hour task, and somehow it takes a week.
Guilty.
Setting tighter, even aggressive deadlines forces focus, makes you more efficient, stops you overthinking just to fill the time.
Okay, so watch out for unrealistic hopes, perfectionism paralysis, rationalizing delays, and Parkinson's law. Got it. Now, how do we actively build that inner strength? You mentioned the uncomfortable muscle. I like that.
Yeah, it's a great analogy because self-discipline is often uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? We don't need discipline for stuff we love doing.
True.
So it's less about having some huge reserve of discipline and more about building your tolerance for that discomfort that comes with chasing goals. Choosing temporary discomfort for long-term gain, like lifting weights, hurts a bit now, stronger later.
So how do we flex this muscle? Give it a workout.
Well, one technique they highlight is called urge surfing. Came out of addiction treatment, actually.
Oh, sure, surfing. Okay.
It's about managing those intense urges for food, procrastination, whatever, just observing them, noticing them rise and fall like waves without getting swept away or identifying with them.
So instead of, I need that cookie, it's more like, experiencing a strong urge for a cookie right now creates distance.
Exactly that. You pause when the urge hits. You focus on the sensations. What does it feel like physically, emotionally? Then gently shift focus to your breath. Imagine riding the urge up and down like a wave. It helps separate you from the urge, makes it feel less overwhelming, easier to ride out without acting on it.
That sounds really useful for those impulsive moments. And the source also said willpower, while it gets tired, can also be strengthened by stepping out of your comfort zone regularly.
Yes, exactly. By doing things that make you just a little uncomfortable, intentionally, you start to learn that the stuff you fear or avoid, usually not as bad as you think.
Builds tolerance.
Right. Increases your tolerance for discomfort, which basically strengthens that willpower muscle over time.
Like that Jing guy and his
Yeah, sure.
rejection therapy, intentionally seeking out rejection.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
He showed how facing discomfort head-on, even in small ways, builds serious resilience and confidence.
So we can do small things, like ordering weird food, taking cold showers.
Yeah. Those little daily practices of discomfort, they add up. They build mental fortitude, make you more comfortable being uncomfortable, which makes the discipline needed for big goals feel less scary.
Okay. Getting comfortable with discomfort makes sense. Now let's talk environment. The sources really stress how much our surroundings impact our discipline.
Oh, this is huge and often really underestimated. A well-designed environment can basically do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, minimizing how much willpower you even need.
So the goal is to conserve willpower by removing distractions and temptations.
Absolutely. Proactively, before you even need the willpower.
Like, obviously, don't hang out at the don't shop if you're cutting sugar, but it's subtler too, right?
Much subtler. There's that study by Baba Shiv showing how even small distractions make us more likely to give in to temptation.
The phone number thing.
Yeah. People trying to remember a phone number were way more likely to choose cake over fruit afterward.
Oh.
It shows how focus is tied to discipline. Even minor distractions chip away at it, maybe without you even noticing.
Like the checkout lanes at the supermarket. Candy bars right when you're tired and mentally drained from shopping.
Classic example of exploiting depleted willpower and distracted minds.
So practically, how do we fight back? How do we design a better environment?
Simple stuff first. Tidy your workspace, clean desk, clearer mind maybe, and then that Cornell study with the Hershey's Kisses.
Oh yeah, the jars.
Right, people ate way more when the kisses were right there on the desk in a clear jar, compared to an opaque one or one further away.
Even if they weren't consciously deciding, I'll eat more now.
Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind is powerful. Make temptations less visible, harder to reach. Use that laziness tendency to your advantage.
Okay, and then there's dopamine, the pleasure chemical. Our modern world is like a dopamine buffet.
Totally. Social media, designed for constant little dopamine hits, likes, notifications, endless scrolling, incredibly habit-forming, huge distractions.
So building an environment that limits exposure to those constant hits is key.
Crucial for focus and discipline. But you can also flip it, right? Use the brain's reward system for yourself.
How so?
Create rewards for the good behaviors.
Yeah.
That fishbowl lottery thing they mentioned from drug rehab shows how even small, unexpected rewards can reinforce positive changes.
So maybe pair a task you dislike with a small reward you look forward to.
Exactly. And the sources also talk about the default effect, making the good choice the easy choice.
Tweaking the environment so the discipline path is the path of least resistance.
Yes. Move those distracting apps off your phone's home screen. Keep healthy snacks out on the counter, junk food hidden away, put your running shoes right by the door. Small changes, big impact. Make the desired behavior the default.
It's about designing your world to support your goals, not constantly fight against them. Really empowering.
It is.
Okay, what about getting help from others? Accountability partners came up.
Yeah, they could be really valuable.
Yeah.
Just having someone to check in with, knowing someone else is aware of your goals.
Yeah.
That desire not to let them down. It adds motivation.
Makes sense. But there was a warning too, right? About just telling everyone your goals.
This was counterintuitive to me at first too. But the research, Peter Gollwitzer's stuff, suggests announcing goals widely, especially early on,
Yeah.
can sometimes backfire. You get the praise, the social validation, just for talking about it. And that can trick your brain into feeling like you've already achieved something.
A premature sense of completeness.
Exactly. It satisfies those identity symbols without you actually doing the work. So maybe keep goals a bit closer to your chest initially, focus on action over announcement.
Interesting. Okay, shifting back to internal strategies. Visualizing your future self. How does that help now?
It makes the long-term consequences feel more real, more immediate. When you vividly picture future you enjoying the rewards of discipline.
Like better health, achieving a goal.
Or, the flip side, future you dealing with the fallout from lack of discipline. It bridges that mental gap between now and later. Makes you care more about the future impact of today's choices.
Like that study where people saw aged photos of themselves and then saved more money.
Perfect example. Made the future consequences feel tangible. And you don't need fancy tech. Just take a moment. How will future me feel about this decision? Will they thank me or regret it?
The 10-10-10 rule seems like a super practical way to do that in the moment.
It really is. Facing an urge, a tough decision. Ask, how will I feel about this in 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days?
Forces you to look beyond the immediate gratification.
Right. Highlights how short-lived some players are compared to the longer-term costs or benefits of resisting.
Like skipping a workout for impromptu drinks. Fun now, but how do you feel 10 hours later when you missed your goal?
Exactly. And you can stretch it 10 weeks, 10 months, 10 years for bigger stuff. The trick is being honest with yourself, not rationalizing the easy way out.
It all ties back to delaying gratification, which seems key. Even small things, like saving the best bite for last.
Yes, simple practices like that can actually help build that muscle over time. Okay, let's talk mindset. Huge factor.
Absolutely. Our beliefs, our attitude, they shape everything. The sources mention the science backs up a positive approach.
Definitely. And one really cool concept is the endowed progress effect.
Okay, tell me about that one.
It's this idea that we're way more motivated to finish something if we feel like we've already made some progress, even if it's kind of an artificial head start.
Like the car wash study.
Exactly. The loyalty card with 10 spots, but 2 were already stamped free. People finish those more often than a blank card needing only 8 washes total.
Even though it's the same amount of work.
Right. That feeling of already being underway makes you more invested. So, for your own goals, acknowledge the progress you have made. Track it visually. Avoid feeling like you're always starting from zero.
That's smart. And thinking about how your actions help others, that can be a powerful motivator too.
Hugely powerful. Adam Grant's research on hospital hand washing.
Oh yeah, the science.
Signs saying hand washing prevents patients from catching diseases were way more effective than signs saying hand washing prevents you from catching diseases.
Taps into that sense of purpose, contributing to something bigger.
Exactly. And you can apply that. How does your getting healthy inspire your kids? How does your hitting a goal motivate your partner? Adds another layer beyond just yourself.
The sources also push for realistic optimism. What's that?
It's hoping for the best, maintaining that positive outlook, but also preparing for the bumps in the road, knowing setbacks will happen.
So you don't get completely derailed by failure. You see it as part of the process.
Right. Helps you bounce back. And another mindset shift. Focus on effort, not just outcome.
Why is that important?
Because outcomes, often outside our full control, there's luck, other people, circumstances. But effort, that's on you. You can always choose to give your best effort right now.
Keeps you motivated, enjoying the process, even when results are slow.
Precisely. Appreciate the journey, the work itself.
Okay, final piece then. Making it stick. Building routines and habits. The sources say this is way more important than just relying on motivation.
Absolutely critical. Maybe the most critical piece for the long haul, motivation. It comes and goes. It's an emotion.
Fleeting.
Totally.
Habits.
They become automatic, baked into your routine. They take way less conscious effort, less willpower.
So the real goal isn't to be motivated all the time, but to build the habits of discipline.
That's the sustainable path. That COMB model they mentioned. Capability, opportunity, motivation leading to behavior. It shows how it all links together. You need the skills, capability, the right environment, opportunity, and yes, some drive, motivation, but building the routine, making it habitual, that's what makes it last.
So focus on creating the supportive structures, the routines, making the discipline choice the easy, automatic one.
Exactly. Motivation gets you started, maybe. But habits and routines, they keep you going. They're the foundation for real, lasting self-discipline and actually hitting those goals.
Okay, wow. That was a lot, but really useful stuff. Let's try and wrap our heads around the key takeaways.
Yeah, let's summarize.
We looked at the brain science, the prefrontal cortex stuff, how that underlies self-control. We talked about willpower being finite, like a muscle that gets tired.
And the strategies to conserve it, like avoiding temptation, managing energy.
Right. Then motivation, understanding intrinsic drivers like autonomy, mastery, purpose, and knowing the difference between that and extrinsic stuff.
We hit those common obstacles too. False hope, procrastination, rationalization, Parkinson's law. and how to get around them.
And the importance of building that uncomfortable muscle, getting used to discomfort through things like urge surfing or just stepping outside your zone.
Don't forget the environment, how huge an impact it has. Designing it to support you, removing distractions, using defaults.
Yeah, the environment piece is massive. Plus accountability, but maybe being careful who you tell early on.
Yeah.
Visualizing your future self.
The 10-10-10 rule for navigating urges.
And mindset. Endowed progress, focusing on others. Realistic optimism, effort over outcome.
And finally, bringing it all home with the absolute importance of building habits and routines as the bedrock for long-term success.
It really drives home that self-discipline isn't some fixed trait you either have or don't.
But not at all. It's a skill. Something you can absolutely develop, strengthen, get better at through understanding this stuff and, well, practicing it.
Okay, so thinking about everything we've just dug into, here's something for you, the listener, to chew on.
Yeah, a final thought.
Considering all these ideas, all these strategies, what's maybe one small science-backed change, something that really resonated with you that you feel you could actually implement, like today, to start building a more disciplined you?
Could be anything we talked about.
Maybe it's putting your phone out of sight during work. Maybe it's trying that 10-10-10 rule next time an urge hits. Just think about your own challenges, your own goals right now. Which single strategy feels like the most doable, most impactful first step you can take?